Scotsman Prodigy Plus Nugget and Flaker machines require regular maintenance, including a bearing check, which should be done at least twice a year or every time the unit is cleaned. Before accessing the bearing, both the front and top panels need to be removed. Once the panels have been removed, push the bail clamp back and remove the chute cover. Next, unscrew and remove the ice sweep, followed by the watershed. The breaker cover, which is reverse threaded, can then be removed. If the bearing on the unit being serviced looks like this, it's a solid lube bearing, which was introduced in 2020 and does not require regular maintenance. At this point, the condition of the grease can be evaluated. Normal wear on the bearing will cause the grease to become gray over time, which is an indicator that the bearing needs to be re-greased. If the grease is extremely dark, watery, rusty, or has any visible metal flakes, the bearing should be replaced. Scotsman sells both the appropriate grease needle and grease for this job. The Scotsman grease changed in 2020 from white to a caramel color. Once it's been identified that the bearing needs to be re-greased, first start by removing all the old grease sitting on top of the bearing. Next, the old grease sitting between the rollers of the bearing needs to be removed. Using a grease gun with Scotsman grease and a Scotsman grease needle, gently insert the grease needle between two rollers as shown in this photo, being careful not to puncture the lip seal beneath the bearing. As the fresh grease is applied, it will replace the old grease by pushing it up and out on top of the bearing. Insert fresh grease in between each roller until all the old grease has been replaced and fresh grease can be seen coming out. Continue this process around the entire bearing. Now that the new grease has pushed all the old grease up and out, remove and discard all excess grease sitting on top of the bearing rollers. Next, place a generous amount of fresh grease on top of the bearing rollers. If needed, use a finger to make sure the entire surface is covered. Before reassembly, clean off any grease from around the bearing housing. To reassemble the unit, first inspect both the lip seal and the O-ring on the breaker cover for damage and replace if needed. Confirm both are properly seated before hand tightening the breaker cover, which, as a reminder, is reverse threaded. Next, place the watershed over the lip seal and then hand tighten the ice sweep onto the breaker. Finally, place the chute cover over the breaker and secure with the bail clamp.